What's up, everyone? My name is Joshua Guerrero. Welcome to the Interview Cast. Got 3 reviews for you today. We got Materialist, Sorry Baby, and Eddington. It's kind of like an A24 special / Pedro Pascal special, because he's in 2 of the 3 movies we're talking about today. It's like he's been in every episode these past few weeks, right? And it's like he's just on his roll of being in every single movie. I guarantee you he's in every movie you've seen recently. If you don't think he's there, you just have to look close enough, freeze frame, zoom in, he'll be there. Alright, first let's get into Materialist. Materialist is a movie from Celine Song. This is her follow-up to 2023's Past Lives. This film follows Lucy, played by Dakota Johnson. She's a failed actress turned successful matchmaker who lives in New York City. She's dead set on staying single when 2 men come into her life and change everything. Harry, played by Pedro Pascal, who's the brother of another couple that she brought together. And John, played by Chris Evans, who is her ex-boyfriend from her acting days. Let's just kind of start off by saying, if nothing else, this movie is made well. I never felt like anything in this movie wasn't made with some sort of thought or care. Like, direction's good, acting is good. For me, I think all the characters did a good job. On the actors, especially Dakota Johnson, who gets a lot of flack for her acting, but honestly in this movie I think she did pretty well. My problems with this movie I think really come down to the writing itself. I don't think the writing is bad, but a lot of stuff just didn't make sense to me. I want to chalk a lot of my misunderstanding up to it being not written for me, if that makes any sense. It wasn't written like when Celine Song was writing this movie. I'm not the person that she was imagining would like it. I don't think so. Not to say that she was writing specifically for a specific kind of person. I just don't think I'm who she had in mind. And that could be it, but at the same time, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. And even if it is the case, if you're writing a movie, it should be accessible to as many people as possible. And for this movie, I just didn't feel the understanding of a lot of decisions that were made by Dakota Johnson's character. And I'm not even really talking about who she chose at the end. That's not really my issue. It's more like just the small things. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand love is irrational, right? Of course it is. It doesn't make sense a lot of the times, especially when it just kind of happens. The characters in this movie aren't brought together by a matchmaker. She is a matchmaker, but she's not orchestrating the meeting or dating or anything. Everything just kind of happens and falls into place. But she has these 2 people that she wants to choose from, and at the end, who she chose wasn't the issue. It was more like the situation around her choosing that person. And don't get me wrong, and I mean, don't worry, I'm gonna spoil this for you, right? So if you haven't seen this, sorry, but she spends the whole movie saying that she doesn't want to be poor, and then she gets with the poor person at the end, and that's fine. It's totally fine. It's not that I don't think that she could change her mind, or that she just falls so in love with this person that it doesn't matter if he has money. And in fact, that's a beautiful thing, right? To be able to be with somebody beyond, despite their financial situation, because I think love goes beyond that barrier. I really do. But the thing that bothered me really about the ending too, other than that, was the scene at the very, very end where she kind of tries to quit her job. I don't know what it was about that, but it just totally rubbed me the wrong way, right? Like, she's making, I think she said $80,000 per year, which is, it's not amazing, but it's definitely not bad, compared to who a struggling theater actor at that. Not even he's not even trying to be a movie star. He wants to be in theater. And the scope of what he's doing they show him do a play towards like the middle-ish of the movie. It's not like Hamilton, it's not like this giant Broadway thing. He's doing these indie shows, and he just can't be making that much money. You know, at least I mean, maybe and I won't even say I'm an expert on anything like that. I'm definitely not. Definitely don't know how much theater actors make, but I just can't imagine that he's making enough money to support them both. And for her to try to quit her job just doesn't make any sense to me. I guess maybe it could be, she doesn't agree with the work she's doing, especially when you get into some situations that happen later on in the movie. Maybe that has a lot to do with it. But I don't know, man. It just totally rubbed me the wrong way. And then, despite the fact that she's trying to quit, they're offering her a promotion, and the boss literally says, "You're taking I want you to take my position. I'm getting sent to the London office, and I want you to literally demand any salary that you want. I will support you 100%." And for her to say, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want money," which, look, I'm not gonna sit and play stupid, right? Like, I understand the idea behind it. It just felt like something that the movie, I felt like it was doing, was it was trying to like check boxes. You know what I mean? Like, trying to check boxes for a movie that is pro woman and pro like doing what you want to do. And that's fine, but it felt kind of cheesy at the end there. Like that "fuck you, I quit" mentality just didn't make much sense here. And I don't know, that really did rub me the wrong way. Like, obviously, love who you want to love, marry who you want to marry, despite the financial situation. But if you're talking about you're a certain way all the way up until this point, up until like the last like 10 minutes of the movie, where they get into like this whole like, what are we, what do you want, notebook type scene, right? And she said she doesn't, basically said she doesn't care, right, if she's poor. Which, okay, fine, if you don't care, that's cool, but you don't have to like dive head first into being like super poor, especially when you're coming off of making $80,000 a year. I mean, I don't know, man. That just totally just did not make any sense to me. Maybe like I said, maybe it just wasn't made for me. That's fine. But I'm the one who was watching it, and I'm the one who's giving his opinion. So for me, it just didn't make any sense. Another thing that kind of pissed me off was this callback at the end of the movie. At the very beginning of the movie, like the first scene, I want to say, they're throwing a party because because the couple that she ends up meeting, the wedding that she ends up meeting Harry at, they're getting married. So in the matchmaking company that she works for, that's a big deal. A lot of relationships don't end up that way. So, and she's responsible for quite a few marriages, and that's what, she's very successful at what she's doing. So they're throwing a party, and she's talking to her boss, and she's like, the boss is like, you guys can get a surgery when if they break their legs. They can get up to 6 inches. Doing that. And it's blah 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 blah. Okay, and then what do you freaking know? Who got the surgery that we know in the movie? It turns out it's Pedro Pascal's character. Like, I've never met anyone that had a surgery like this. Why is this so prevalent in this movie? Like, I don't know. That did not make any sense to me. Like, oh, it just drives me crazy. Like that. Like, you didn't even need to ever go back to that. Or even if you did, you could have even just said, it was something I thought about, but that's kind of crazy, right? No, Pedro Pascal and his brother both got the surgery to add like 6 inches to their height. And I'm assuming Pedro Pascal character is supposed to be like 6 foot, like exactly, right? That man is 5'10". He does not even look 6 foot. Even next to Dakota Johnson. Let's be honest, I'm a short guy, right? I know. And it just did not, just did not work for me. I did not like that. And I was reading a lot of like other people's comments about it, like, oh, I thought that was cool that they came back to that. Like, I'm glad they had a payoff. I didn't give a fuck if it had a payoff. I didn't need a payoff on that. That felt like a throwaway. Just felt like a fun way to like introduce them as people. But no, we're literally going back to that one little line at the end of the movie. And that's the scene where she literally breaks up with Pedro Pascal's character. And ends up going back to Chris Evans. Like, I don't know, man. That just did not work for me. Um, and beyond that, the chemistry between everyone was actually really good. I really thought that her and Pedro Pascal had a unique chemistry compared to her and Chris Evans' character, which I think worked really well for the movie, right? Like, um, Pedro Pascal, he always is gonna be Pedro Pascal, but in a good way. He has a great personality. He has this great aura about him. And in the movie, he comes off as extremely charming to the point where I'm like, hey, you know what? I want to marry Pedro Pascal too. I'm not even gay, but fuck it. And he's rich. Fuck it. No, I'm kidding. But, he came off so charming and everything. And then Chris Evans, he has his own kind of charm, which I will say this. It did feel weird to see Chris Evans in this role where he's supposed to be like this scruffy, poor, like kind of guy, when Chris Evans notoriously doesn't give that kind of energy. Like even in Knives Out, right? Knives Out really captures like his energy to where like he's this rich, spoiled brat, right? In this movie, he obviously is not that kind of character at all, and he does kind of pull it off because if you kind of think about some other things that he's done, he does have that kind of grungy personality. Sometimes he can get the attitude about him, but I don't know. Some parts of it weren't quite working in that sense. It was nice though because he was able to do some comedic things, with where his situation was. He had like 3 or 4 other roommates, and there's a scene at the end, which is where she goes back to him that like she's trying to call him, but his phone's not working. Turns out his roommate like unplugged his charger to like I think plug in a blender, and so the dude literally or Chris Evans literally goes, grabs the other dude's phone and like throws it in the blender and turns it on and fucking fucks his shit. And that was funny. He had some moments like that were really good for him. But I don't know. If anything, that was probably the weakest portrayal in the movie for me was Chris Evans. Not to say he didn't act well. He does. He always does. Chris Evans gives a great performance in anything I've ever seen him in. So that's not the issue that he didn't give a good performance. I just didn't feel like it should have been a different person. You know what I mean? The casting just didn't quite fit for me in that sense. Then throughout the movie, she's made to seem like kind of a bitch, but really it's just her choosing her own agency over, other people's feelings, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's this part, this big, I guess, conflict in the movie, at least for Dakota Johnson's character especially, where she mates a match. She's trying to get this girl a date, and she ends up matching her with this guy, and he ends up sexually assaulting her on the date. And Dakota Johnson, in the girl's eyes, gets blamed for that, which, I mean, I guess, if something like that happens to you, you want to find something to blame, or you want to find some sort of reasoning behind it. So I guess it's easy to blame the person who put you in that situation. But, I mean, if you look at it logically, like, this guy had been on other dates with other women that just didn't work out, and he had never done anything like this before. So how was she supposed to know? I don't know. And then it kind of, like, it's the way they resolve it also kind of bothered me a little bit because literally the dude I think shows back up at her apartment and Dakota Johnson is with Chris Evans at this wedding, and the lady calls Dakota Johnson's character and is like, hey, can you come help me? I don't know who else to call. I don't know, I maybe would have called the police, but she called her, and so she comes and saves the day, and that's how they resolve that whole thing. Like, makes her feel better and shows, oh, Dakota Johnson's not a bitch. She didn't mean to do it on purpose. I don't know. That just felt like another weak plot point to me. I just didn't care for it. I don't know, man. A lot of things just didn't sit right with me in this movie. Maybe it just wasn't made for me, like I said. I could totally understand that. Totally get it. I feel like she should have chose Pedro Pascal. Not even because he was rich, but just because he was much more put together than Chris Evans' character. I feel like that would have been a much more mature and logical decision. But I know love isn't always mature. That might have sounded wrong. But it's not always logical for sure, right? It's really hard to say how I feel about it. I didn't hate it. It has some good qualities, but I just don't ever see myself going back to it. And I can honestly see it fading into obscurity. Like, it's not gonna be any kind of cult classic. So for that, I give it a 4.5 out of 10. Almost got to put it up. So 4.5 out of 10 for me on this movie. That's just my opinion. Of course, you're allowed to have your own. If you've seen it, go ahead and let me know how you feel about it. Would love to hear your review. Next, we'll be getting into Sorry Baby. Sorry Baby is the directorial debut of Eva Victor. It also stars her as a woman named Agnes, who is pursuing her PhD when something bad happens to her. That's how the movie puts it. She is sexually assaulted by her professor / mentor and has to cycle through these feelings and repercussions of those actions throughout the movie. She spends a lot of time with her friend Liddy, portrayed by Naomi Aki, who you might remember from Mickey 17 earlier this year. We follow her through about 4 or 5 years of her life during and after the bad thing. I just want to say I really loved this movie. I hadn't really heard anything or seen anything about it until I actually watched it. I had seen like one small clip from the trailer on TikTok before, and I had just thought it was about like this girl who gets a cat because something bad happens to her, and I thought like it was gonna be about her journey with the cat. Spoiler alert: the cat is barely in the movie. He's there, he's a character. He shows up quite a few times, but that's not the biggest plot point of the movie at all. So if you're going in there expecting a cat movie like I was, change up your expectations. But I thought she was maybe gonna go through grief or something like that, some kind of loss from the trailer and what I had seen, and I wasn't quite expecting the exact situation that transpired. I will say, I think it was a little rough for me at the beginning, not because of what happened. Obviously, it's a movie, so things happen. But I think the way the characters were handling was throwing me off at first. They were making all these jokes, and it was like, this is a serious situation in my head, and it threw me off. But then I really sat back and thought about it, and I thought about, how I interact with my friends and how we talk to each other, and it just, when I thought of it that way, it clicked so hard in my head. After that, I was so into the characters, and everyone felt so real, and I just loved seeing everyone interact and how the story progressed, and the writing, is just so strong in this movie, so strong. I really can't give the direction, the acting, and writing any more praise than it's amazing. Everything was hitting on all cylinders. For me, I really, really loved this movie. When you have these characters who feel so real, interact, there's so many scenes where things are said and you could see it being a real thing, and I loved that about this movie. So there's these group of characters that it follows mostly, other than Naomi Aki and Eva Victor. They have a little group of friends that they were, I guess, studying with or whatever, and they all kind of interact after that school time is over. And there's one character that neither, there's always that one friend in your group of friends who everyone talks shit about because they're kind of an asshole, and that's the character in this movie who, I can't remember who plays her. I might look it up, but either way, she's kind of a bitch, right? Like, quite literally. And Eva Victor and Naomi Ackie don't really care for her, but still, hang out with her sometimes. I think maybe because of the situation, I don't know exactly, but they do still hang out with her, like, at the beginning of the movie, which is kind of switches back and forth between that time and about 3 or 4 years after. They're having dinner with her, and, at her place. I think it's kind of like a get-together, like, oh, we haven't seen each other in all this time, blah, blah, blah. So they get together, and they're having dinner around this table. And I think something is said that upsets Eva Victor's character, and she walks away to go to the bathroom to either calm down or to just get her bearings. And they're eating, I think they're eating fish, right? And Naomi Aki's character is like, there's a bone in my fish. And she's like, huh? And she's like, there's there's bones in my fish. And she was like, oh, we'll just eat around it. She was like, you should debone fish better before you give it to people. And it's one of those small, really petty like things to say when you just don't like somebody and you're just always looking for something to like hate on them for. Like, I don't know, it just felt so real to me. I loved that. One of my favorite parts of this movie is actually towards the end, where this crazy revelation is made. That girl who is kind of a bitch is mad at Eva Victor's character because Eva Victor gets the teaching job that their professor once held. And after that whole thing happened, she literally the next day she comes to the police and everything and reports him, blah, 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 blah. And he, like, leaves, I think he leaves the whole country, and that's a teaching in Canada or something like that, right? And, excuse me. And they end up offering Eva Victor's character the job. And so her friend confronts her. She's really weird about it too, right? Like at first she's like circling the classroom, like a shark, like walking by back and forth. And Eva Victor's like, I'll go handle this. So I believe after the class, she goes to her office and they're talking about it, and she's like, it's not fair that all these good things happen to you. Things happen to you so easily compared to other people. And she's like, this wasn't easy for me. And, I didn't just get handed this. I worked for it. And she's like, I worked for it too. I fucked him. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, I fucked him and I still didn't get this job. And it totally throws her for a loop because obviously this guy sexually assaulted her. But this girl literally willingly went over and fucked him, and she just can't wrap her mind around that at the moment. So she ends up having a panic attack, and she drives off, and she's in her car having a panic attack, which is terrifying. If you've ever had a panic attack, you know exactly how it feels. It literally feels like you're having a heart attack. I've had a couple panic attacks in my life, so I can totally understand, the crazy anxiety that she's feeling. So she pulls into the parking lot. She's having trouble breathing, and the parking lot that she pulls into is like this sandwich shop. And so the owner comes out and knocks on her door, like her window, and tells her to roll the window down. And he's played by John Carroll Lynch, who, if you know who John Carroll Lynch is, he's in quite a few things. He always gives a great performance. He just has this great like air about him. Off the top of my head, I know a movie that he was a bigger part in was The Founder. I don't know, he played one of the McDonald's brothers. And they have this amazing conversation where he just connects with her. He helps her calm down, tells her, his son has had panic attacks, and so he knows what it's like, and he knows how to help. He's like, just breathe with me, blah, blah, blah. All those things that you tell someone who's having a panic attack to help them. And so he helps her calm down, and they share this great conversation. He says to her, time is a crazy thing, basically. He's like, he ends up asking her, he's like, my son has panic attacks. She's like, do you have any kids? And she's like, no, I couldn't even imagine myself being the age I am now. And he's like, do you think I imagine myself looking like this? Like, time is just crazy. And she's, she doesn't outright tell him what happened to her, but she kind of does explain, something bad happened to me, and it's really hard on me even now, just, 3 years later. And he's like, 3 years isn't that much time. It is, but it isn't. It feels like a long time, but it's really not. And it really connected with me because of, my bad thing that happened, which is, 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, my parents died just a couple of weeks apart. And, I literally watched both my parents get sick and die. So it was, that was hard on me at the time. And it's still, hard to this day. Obviously not as hard as it was when it freshly happened, but not a day goes by that I don't think about those things. And sometimes I'll feel bad, like that it's been almost 3 years now and I still have heavy feelings about it. It's one of those things where you look at someone and they talk about, negative self-talk and how you should always treat yourself how you would treat someone that you cared about. And but it's, it's hard, right? So like I try to think like, you know, if someone else was in my same position, I would tell them that it's okay to still feel those things because, you know, it was a terrible thing that happened. But in my head, sometimes it's like, why are you still feeling like this? You need to get over it. But obviously, that's just not how things work. So to hear that conversation and to hear him say like that it's okay, that she still has a hard time with it, and that 3 years isn't that long, and all these things, like it really connected with me. I actually ended up crying during the movie, and it was just a beautiful scene. And um, beyond that, there's so many scenes like that in this movie, and I really connected with the character because I have a hard time being serious about things too. I am the kind of person who's gonna make a joke no matter what, and so it was a little rough to see that at first, from these characters. But then, like I said, when I really thought about it in the moment and I understood it, it was like I was watching a movie about someone like me. So I really, really loved that. Um, so then, there's other characters in this movie as well that are written really well, and other scenes that are just as tender and beautiful. Um, she lives in like this wooded area. I want to say it's kind of weird. It's almost like in the middle of nowhere, like almost in the countryside, and she only has like one neighbor nearby her, who is played by Lucas Hedges, who he's in quite a few A24 movies and a lot of indie stuff. Um, it's always funny seeing him in the movie because like I'm just waiting for him to start yelling because he's always yelling in movies, and I don't remember him ever yelling specifically in this movie, which is, hey, different for him. But they end up hooking up and dating. I don't want to say dating. I don't think they ever specifically say that they're dating, but they definitely have like a sexual thing going on. And there's this really great moment that they share. The cat that I was talking about earlier comes into play. He ends up, which if you have a cat, every cat has done some stupid ass shit like this. Maybe not this specifically, but something like it. The cat kills a mouse, or catches a mouse and then brings it into her bed, and she's freaking out. Blah blah blah. She ends up having to like put the mouse down herself because he's like all mutilated and shit, right? So she's upset, and she goes to her neighbor because she doesn't know what the fuck to do, and she literally just says, "Will you have sex with me?" Like, because it's just one of those things where you don't know what else to do. So yes, let's have sex. So they have sex, and then she's in the bathtub, right? And he comes into the bathroom and takes a piss. And that's another thing. Like, that's really cute. Like, you know what I mean? When when you're that comfortable with somebody that you can literally use the bathroom while they're in there. It was like that, right? So they have their thing, and she's in the bathtub, and he's like, "Can I join you?" And she's like, "Sure." So he gets naked, and she just starts looking at his dick. And he's like, "Well, there's something wrong with it?" Basically, I don't remember. It's not word for it. She's like, "I've just never seen one so soft." And he's like, "Why the fuck would you say that to me?" Like it's just this great interaction, right? And it captures this comfortability that she has with him, and it's this amazing growth in her character, right? At the beginning of the movie, she is sexually assaulted by a man, and at this point, she's so comfortable with this other man. She's able to be completely naked with him, and they get in the bathtub together, and then the scene, that's the funny part of the scene where she's talking about his penis, right? But then he gets in the bathtub and they're talking, and then he asks her if she wants to like basically like change positions, so she's laying on him and they're like cuddling in the bathtub. So she's like, yeah. So he gets out of the tub and gets back in, and they have this really tender moment where they're holding each other in the bathtub, and it's really beautiful. This movie has so much beauty to it like that. And then it goes into the end of the movie, right? Like, so her friend, played by Naomi Aki, is a lesbian, and she ends up getting married. That's part of the beginning of the movie. She's talking about, I'm getting married. But now at the end, she has a baby. They have a baby together, And well, I don't know about together, but they are raising a child together that Naomi actually birthed. So, um, she comes over to Eva Victor character's house, and they're hanging out with the baby and the wife, and it's all cool. And Eva Victor's character and Naomi Ak's character were gonna go do something together, but they wanted everyone to go, but they couldn't because obviously someone has to stay with the baby. And she's like, Naomi Aki's character's like, oh, I wanted to do it with you, talking about the wife. And Victor's like, you know what, y'all go ahead, y'all go and do it. It's I've done it before or something, whatever the circumstance is. Y'all go ahead. I'll stand and I'll watch the baby. And they kind of have their own little, they're more jokes like don't drop her or like all these funny things. And when they leave, she picks up the baby and starts talking to the baby and has this amazing scene with the baby, where the movie gets its title from, because she tells the baby sorry, sorry that one day something bad is gonna happen to you, something bad happens to everybody. She's like, it's crazy to think that you're alive right now and you don't really even know it, and like I said, I'm sorry that bad things are gonna happen to you one day, but just know that you can come to me and tell me anything. You can tell me if something bad happens to you. You can tell me if you feel bad about yourself, if you want to kill yourself. Like, this amazing scene, right? And it just it's the culmination of everything in this movie, and it ends so beautifully. All I can really say is that I think everyone should watch this movie. It is amazing. Like I said, it was a little rough for me at first, but I think, especially if you're like me, you will be able to understand where these characters are coming from and the way that they act. And by the end, I had gone through this amazing journey with this movie and had so many emotions. So it's really such a great directorial debut. I can't wait to see what she does next. For me, Sorry Baby gets an 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, that was great. Honestly, amazing. Next, we'll be getting into Eddington. Y'all heard of Eddington? I'm sure you have. Eddington is the latest effort from Ari Aster, well-known horror director from A24. It is set in a small New Mexico town during the pandemic. It follows Joaquin Phoenix's character Joe Cross, the sheriff of the town, and Ted Garcia, played by Pedro Pascal, who is the mayor. Joe is very much an anti-masker, while Joe is, he follows the rules and does the right things. Tensions grow between them until Joe decides to run against Ted in the election, and a feud that has been growing for many years comes to a head. So, one thing I'll say about this film is that I did enjoy it, but I feel like it went on for too long. This movie was nearly 3 hours long, and I've spoken before about how I feel about that, right? There's nothing wrong with a long movie if that's what the story needs for it to be told, but this is not one of those movies. I think this movie would have been much better sub 2 hours, like maybe an hour 50 at the most, but 2 hours, I think it's like 2 hours and 2 hours and 50 minutes or some shit like that. Like, it is way too fucking long. There are so many plot points and characters that are just used to pad out this story that have no real reason of being there. The biggest one for me is Austin Butler's character. He had like maybe 3 or 4 scenes in the whole movie, and none of them even really mattered. Like, I know they kind of do a thing where like he basically is like part of a cult, and it's like this whole other, like, there's a cult, and his Joaquin Phoenix's character's wife ends up like joining the cult, and it's okay, whatever. I don't know. I didn't care about that. And there are some scenes that just drag on, and like I said, length is not an issue for me if it's required. But some of these scenes didn't need to be that long. Specifically, the scene with Austin Butler's character at the dinner, like, it was just going and going and going, and I'm like getting bored with it, and nothing interesting is happening or being said. And then even if you think something interesting is happening, nothing matters. Like, nothing ever really comes because of it. It's just unneeded. And for me, that's the biggest downfall of this movie, because when the movie was hitting, it was amazing, but there's so much of this movie that just didn't need to be there. Like I said, there is another cut of this movie somewhere that is trimmed down quite a bit and shuffle some things around, and it's an amazing movie. But this was not that version of that movie. Ari Aster has this great gift for building tension and then executing and following up on that tension. And so when the movie does hit that rush from everything that's building up, it doesn't let up, and then it's this great action-packed movie. But up until that point, it just was droning on and on and on. Like the last hour or so of this movie is quite literally insane, and I loved it. Like once it kicks off, right, I was locked in. And that's about the point where Joaquin Phoenix kind of like comes out and says that Pedro Pascal's character raped his wife, which she comes out the next day and said that he didn't. And so he goes over to Pedro Pascal's house because they got a noise complaint because they're having like a get together because he's the mayor and they're during an election time and he has all these people around him, blah, blah, blah. And he confronts Pedro Pascal's character and they get into a little argument, and Pedro Pascal's character literally slaps him across the face in front of all these people. And from that moment, I was like, oh shit. And then, Joaquin Phoenix's character ends up killing a guy, and you're like, oh shit. And then he ends up killing Pedro Pascal's character and his son, and I was like, oh shit. But no, it was like one thing, boom, 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 boom. And, that was great. That was very, very well done. Could not have asked for a better, like, breakup of everything that had been going on so far. Something that I really liked about it was that we followed Joe, Joaquin Phoenix, as the protagonist, but we're not supposed to like him. Like, he's a very unlikable person. Like, he does all these things like anti-mask and blah, 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 which if you remember the pandemic, I don't know what side you're on. I was a masker. I wore a mask when I needed to wear a mask, blah, blah, blah. I didn't. I followed the rules. I got a vaccine. I was one of those people. If you weren't, we were not seeing eye to eye at that time. I don't know what to tell you. But, so he does all those things that I wouldn't have done. So we're not supposed to like him, I don't think. I really don't think. And that makes it interesting because at the end, when he's literally getting like gunned down, you want him to die, but he just doesn't die. He will not die. And then we get into this super bleak ending because, after he gets shot at and almost murdered, he literally gets stabbed in the head, and you think he's dead. You're like, whew, thank God he fucking died. But then he doesn't die, and he's like a vegetable. And that's kind of like the only comeuppance I think really that happens, is that he gets to live as a vegetable and watch like his town fall apart even more. Because one of the big conflicts of the movie is that they want to open up this like AI data center in the town. And like if you live now, of course, which we all live now, these centers are very hard on the environment of the place that they are located. So that's a strike against him, because he's now made to see that it's made to seem that he is supportive of it, because he's the mayor now. Even though he's a vegetable, he's the mayor, but it's almost like by proxy, he doesn't really actually do anything. He doesn't make any of the decisions. It's his mother. And so it's this really dark, depressing ending for him, which I guess in a way is worse than him dying, So depends on how you look at it. I think it was very interesting to do that. Let's see. I think that's pretty much all I have about this. I don't want to drone on about this movie too long, especially because the episode's getting kind of long again. But yeah, I like I said, when it was hitting hard. When it wasn't, it was so boring that I wanted to turn it off. I think there's another way this movie could be edited down to be great. It was just way too long, and so much of it didn't matter. Let's see. So for that, I will be giving Eddington a 5 out of 10. Yeah, let's see here. That's pretty much all I got for you today.